Reality. It has a solid and comforting sound, like the chair that you know will always be there when you sit down. Tonight, we intend to pull that chair out from under you. What appears to be solid is not. What appears to be singular is multiple. What appears to be real is different to you than it is from anyone else in this room, in this city, in this world. Reality is multiple. If you look to the physical reality alone, and look about you and what you appear to see, go out on a sunny day and look around and see the beautiful colors of nature. Then take a pair of sunglasses with green lenses and put them on. Look around you again, and you see that everything looks different, that the colors have changed. All is energy. All matter is energy. All energy is energy. Everything is energy, created along different wavelengths. What you see is strictly limited. When you are wearing the sunglasses, you must see in shades of green, because you are limited by the nature of the lenses and their interaction with your eyes and the environment. As a human being, you have chosen strict limitation in your perception of what is around you, what the nature of reality may be. Before you are born into this life, into this incarnation, you hold a conference with yourself and you come up with an agreement that you are going to divide, and that part of you, the bulk of you, 99/100% of your consciousness, is going to be in the wider reality. That's the higher self. The higher self still retaining the knowledge of a sharer in the essence of God, of the universe, of all, and its intricate interrelationships. Now, even beyond this life and in the wider reality, even then your perception is limited. It stays limited, gradually widening until you reach oneness with the essence of God. Only then is true wholeness reached. But in the meantime, you have been born into a world that puts blinkers on you, and puts you in a wheelchair, and stuffs cotton in your ears, and tapes your mouth closed. You are bound and gagged by the limitations of this earthly reality, and it's for a purpose, not to make you suffer, but to bring your focus in, to narrow it, so that you, in that aspect of your wider reality, in this aspect that you appear in now, may fully engage in a game, a serious game, but a game with rules, a game with limitations. You can't sit down at a game of chess or of Monopoly and make up your rules as you go along. That is a strictly limited reality that you are dealing with. Demarcated on all sides by rigid walls beyond which you cannot pass. And if you follow those rules and you interrelate with the other players that are following the same set of rules, you'll have a satisfying experience, win or lose. So is it, to an extent, in the earth reality, is that you are taking your part in an immensely complicated and highly serious and potentially joyful game of growth. It is the mission of every spirit, in every lifetime, throughout eternity, to grow. That is the one basic law of the universe, the necessity for growth. In order to do that, you accept all of these limitations. You further accept the constantly shifting burden of karma, of unpaid debts owed and owing, that is your inheritance from all of the other lives that you are experiencing simultaneous with this life, other aspects of that wider self. Many, hundreds, thousands, doesn't matter, but as many as necessary of focuses of realities. Integrated beyond this life, where you are but a pinprick of consciousness, by the holder of the pin, which is you in your wider magnificence, and you are all, we may assure you, magnificent. In this life, your connection not only with the higher, wider reality, but with all of the other lives that you're leading simultaneously is strictly limited. Your focus and the laws of the game limit what you can see, limit the spectrum of colors that you can see, limit your ability to see that matter is energy, that the solid is permeable. And for example, you have recently, there has been the development of microphotography. Now you look around you at your reality and you can see there are big things in it and there are small things in it and there are very, very small things in it. But beyond that visible level, with the aid of this electronic photography, you are able to penetrate into a world that cohabits with yours, that is an integral part of yours, and yet completely inaccessible to your conscious perception. A world, you perceive through this means, populated by the strangest of creatures. Paul was just scratching one over here. The strangest of creatures. And as you focus in on another level of that reality, smaller and smaller, you see that there is an entire system of life, interactive, feeding upon one another, feeding upon you. And you see that there is a full reality there, quite beneath your notice. Then you tighten the focus further and go smaller and smaller. There you perceive there is another level of reality in which the creatures of the first level that you saw would be so huge as to be invisible, as that level is invisible to you. Now, you don't have the equipment to do it, but you could keep doing that. There isn't a limit, you see. And there isn't a limit in the other direction either. That is only one axis of the multi-leveled reality on a very physical plane, earth-bound, but level after level after level. Now, beyond that, there are many other realities that coincide, intersect, share, and are ignored by this reality that you live in. Perhaps only a heartbeat away, perhaps only the blinking of an eye away, just the extension of the spectrum away. Interacting with this dimension of reality. Not entirely independent, just as that tiny horrific creature that feeds upon your skin is dependent upon you, although he's ignorant of your existence and your true nature as you are of his. So is it in the realities that spread their ripples throughout the pond of the universe. Those are touched upon. Those are lived in. Those are the worlds in which you are living the lives. Each one, to the perception of its inhabitants, as solid and impermeable, permanent, lasting as this one. So you see level beyond level beyond level, both in the physical universe and a turn or two away. That still is only the beginning. Because beyond those, there are other realities that are personal. So we see more than one system operating here. One is a general series, virtually illimitable, of realities both dimensionally and caught in time and space as you are. Then beyond that is another system that is as individual as each of you. There you are seeing realities that you have designed and are creating and recreating moment by moment by moment by moment, based upon your own fluctuating, changing, growing needs. In that wider reality, as you are planning, and you know we're using approximations in this because the true nature of being is not readily translatable into English, because you are living under the rules of the game, and some concepts are simply not available to you under the rules of the game. But suffice it to say that these are analogies, and so there is a planning process. There is a looking around at where you are, the many yous, in the many lives, and understanding that they are simultaneous, so that karma is not implacable and immovable either. It shifts and changes as changes take place in this life and that life and this life and that life and this life. All of them feeding energy back and forth, back and forth. All is energy. Infinitely complex and beautiful. So you make your plan. And you see that because of all that is happening in your many lives, as you are dealing issue by issue with all of the courses that you must take to graduate from this particular school and this level of development, you create a being. You create circumstances necessary for that being to grow, to learn, to be hampered, to be blocked, to follow the kind of path necessary, to be exposed to the kind of lessons necessary, to be given the options of choice necessary for your growth and your understanding. In one life you may do nothing but take bad choices. There's no penalty, because all of the lives are at one. You know, it's not, well, you're going to have to serve another 70 years. You say, you screwed up this one. It's all happening at once, and it shifts and changes based upon those choices on each road of each life. And so when you go through this life, following the structure of circumstances that you created before you opened your eyes into the world in your present identity, as you follow that structure and as you make the choices that are opened to you, you are constantly changing the direction and the content of your reality. Each human being is, in a sense, creating a tapestry woven of many, many threads of energy. And like all great tapestries, it tells gradually a story. And sewn into that tapestry are all of the adventures and all of the opportunities and all of the beasts and dragons all of the pitfalls, all of the strengths, all of the help from the gods and the goddesses, worthy of a saga. But each tapestry is different. The tapestries refer to commonalities, and you weave into your tapestry, as need dictates, your friend, your wife, your husband, your lover, your father, your mother, your brother, a job, a school, a tragedy, a joy. You all share in the labor of each other's tapestries. But it is not your tapestry, only one is yours. And so when you look at your life from a distance, and you see it unroll before you, and you see your early circumstances and what your relationship was with your parents and your siblings, and how school affected you, and how all of the events that came into your life turned you this way and that, how one group of friends gradually evolved into another, how one romance blossomed and bloomed and died, and led into another based upon your experience in that one. That there is a constant changing flow of reality that becomes that tapestry of your life. And it is unique to you because you have created in the beginning a unique character. Absolutely unique. We're always talking about you're unique as energy. Well, that's so abstract. We think a lot of it escapes you. But you are totally and completely unique, although you share commonality because finally you are one. But you have created a unique being. A unique path that you must follow to learn your unique lessons and to reach your unique goal. And so as you are born into the life, and you have agreed to separate in knowledge and understanding and vision from your higher self, accepting the rules of the game, you are guided in that life by the higher self. And well, there's other guidance too, but by and large, you are guided by the higher self, the subconscious, what have you, whatever you want to call it, instinct. You know, there have been many names to describe this inner guidance. That guidance is not for you alone, because the guidance comes from the wider you that is so intimately and with such awareness connected with all other beings. And so on that level of reality, you are and can see yourselves to be one. And as your lives interweave, it is from the dictation of your own higher self in cooperation with those others who are weaving their own tapestry. And so there's a beautiful, stately dance of souls entering and leaving, Alamanning left and do-si-doing. And as the life continues, that shift continues, shifting realities, changing realities, because every step you take, you are making a choice and a decision. You are the needle pulling the thread through the tapestry, building the design as you live, creating it in its unique way for your specific needs. But you are doing so, as far as the ego self is concerned, that part of you think of when you think of yourself, I, doesn't know what's going on. Blind, deafened, stumbling, crippled. Staggering from place to place, choice to choice. Having no idea that there is a vast and eternal plan, let alone what it might be. And that has been the history of humankind and your own history in terms of all of the lives that you have led up until this point. Now your awareness, now even though everything is happening at once, even though these lives are simultaneous, there is an order in which awareness grows. This life, for you, is the life of all lives, Because a change takes place in this life that is unique, that is unifying. All through history, and stepping into time, which is one of the rules of the game, we look back into history, we look back into the dawn of humankind, into the population of this planet, and into the long odyssey of the quest for understanding that has been the human journey. And we see at first a humanity so blind in its awareness, so limited, so primitive, so cut off from wider knowledge, that it must be guided in a very tangible way. And so the consciousness of humankind in those early times, and up and through into what you would think of as classical times, throughout that period of time, there was overt guidance from gods, goddesses, fairies, elves, so forth and so on. Beings who needed to step into the reality and say, walk here, do this, do that, don't do this. Because the human consciousness hadn't developed enough yet to be able to take that responsibility. And so the consciousness allowed, the rules of the game allowed for the recognition, not really understanding, creating myths, creating stories to explain the voices in their heads, the apparitions that they saw. Very real, but real is always in quotes. Then as the human growth continued, a major change occurred in the reality, is that the gods withdrew their overt interference and guidance in human life. And humankind was given the responsibility, and a terrifying one it was, that let loose an age of wars and of militarism and of brutality, unguided, unlimited by the powers from the wider reality, until gradually the consciousness matured. And then there came the time heralded by the Christ and some other figures, but for this culture, the Christ, that signaled the right of humankind to explore the mind, to develop the mind, the ability to explore all that the mind is capable of. And that reality has continued until this time. Well, we've seen a gradual growth. The fear, yes, because still there is the duality, still there is the separation from higher self. Still, humankind, human beings are lost in darkness and fear, not understanding, stumbling still from place to place, and fearing that which they do not understand and cannot be explained satisfactorily to them by the philosophies that they know. A life unguided by God or his minions, and unguidable by man in imbalanced form. Now comes the new birth, a new level of reality, a new level of consciousness. That consciousness allows you to become, finally, the conscious master of your own life, by ending the separation between ego and higher self, by balancing body, mind, and spirit, your own nature, by bringing those separate tapestries into one. And that means we're talking about consciousness. Your consciousnesses have been cut off from each other, as well as being cut off from your own higher source. You have seen yourselves as separate when you are one. You have seen yourselves having different goals, different languages, different kinds of understanding, different colors, all emphasizing you're different. You are you and no one else. And that person is different. Lies to support the illusion, to create the conditions necessary for the path that you have been forced out of need to follow. But now comes a new chapter. But it doesn't happen to you automatically. You are not automatically given the ability to unify your understanding, to expand your consciousness, to embrace the truth, to become, at long last, free. Being such a momentous occasion in the history of humankind and in the history of your own soul, naturally it is accompanied by fear, by pain, and avoidance of recognition, fear of the responsibility implied by freedom. You are the designers of your own reality, but only in the sense of the higher self. The ego self, you, what you've always thought of as you, what a boob. Having no control over your reality. Limping helplessly, aimlessly along. And that is ending. But what a shock to the system to open your eyes and see what is truly around you. Have you looked at new babies when they open their eyes and are finally able to discern the shapes and the forms and the colors around them? They're absolutely astonished. They look around and they cannot codify what they're seeing. What is this big mass over here? What's that blinding light? What's that color? What's this movement? What are these smells? What are those sounds? What is this incredible assault upon all of my senses? And the early time in life is spent in figuring out just what in the world is going on. In that narrow, limited world, looking up out of the cradle. Tremendous shock. And it is no less a shock that you are feeling in this awakening. You have been blind and now you can see, but you don't even know what you're seeing. You can't codify it. You can't understand it. You can't make sense of it. Now you are changing, you see, by your own choice. But this time, you are not being towed along like a trailer behind a car. This time you're in charge. You're waking up. You have all along, through all of your lives, been creating your own reality. But it's been the guidance, the nudging, the still small voice, the information in dreams, what appear to be accidents, synchronistic events. You've been manipulated, my friends, for thousands and thousands of years by your higher self, but since all are one, that's a minor point. But now, you become a full partner. Before you can accept that full partnership, you've got to learn the business. You've got to start in the stockroom, work your way up. And we know we're mixing countless metaphors and analogies, but trying to build a picture indicating to you the enormity of the events that are surrounding you, filling you, changing you. You are inevitably distracted by your humanness, by the physical pains that you feel, by the pain in the heart, by love affairs that are changing as a result of your own growth, of what you appear to be losing when you are on the threshold of gaining all, by the job that's turning sour because you no longer fit that slot, because you're no longer the person that got that job. By the energy that is assailing you on all sides, forcing you by your own choice to grow, to suffer what must be suffered so that suffering may be ended. You're learning the business. In meditation, you are learning that there are more things on heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Your horizons expand. Your awareness expands. Now that is what is so disconcerting. Literally, your awareness is expanding, but you don't understand what you're seeing. You can't make sense of it yet. And so all you feel it as is nervousness, anxiety, you're sick to your stomach, you're in pain. You know that you don't see things the way you used to, but you don't see what it is you're seeing now. It is a stormy time. But at last, and not for long, not for long, we're not talking forever. This reality that you all agreed upon is in the paroxysms of enormous change, just as your personal reality is. So beyond that agreement that you made with your higher self to create a specific life with specific needs and events, so on the level of the higher self, because you are all connected there, has been a general agreement about the nature of the times in which you are born, as they relate to overall human growth and progress. And so you each assume your rightful role in that gigantic tapestry that takes in all of the personal tapestries. Well, that's changing too. Not only are you opening your eyes and wondering what's going on, but humanity, not all of humanity, but a great and awakening portion of humanity are doing just that. And it is as confusing and disconcerting in the larger sense of humanity itself as it is in the smaller. Now, that brings up the question of all of those individuals, and so many of them in your own life, who are clearly not here to be awakened, whose reality does not include what seems so amazing yet so completely credible to you. To them is science fiction, fantasy, witchcraft, nonsense, idle dreams, or worse. Their reality doesn't allow for it. That's not what's in their tapestry. That's not a part of their story this time. But remember, reality is illimitable. And we say in their turn, but that's a misnomer because it's happening to them in another part of this great structure. It was said in the Bible, in my house are many mansions. Many realities in God's house. But no classes and no hierarchy. And so when you look at a fellow human being who is shaking his fist in anger at you or at your kind, who wants to limit your freedom, who wants to deny and does deny everything that you hold true and needful, look beyond this moment, because that's a part of the awareness that is coming to you, the ability to transcend time from a new perspective and see with love a creature who is you and who is just as developed as you, but who in this life, in this aspect of reality, must explore the nature of fear and the experience of death. You will never again need that fear experience of death, the fear of ending, of being not here. That fear, such a basic fear, for the poor isolated ego who has no idea of what lies beyond that thin curtain, who is lost in the feeling of his own limitation. And my friends, we include many so-called, the vast bulk of so-called Christians who ostensibly believe in the life eternal, but who pay only lip service to it. Why? Because they're hypocrites? No. They don't have the consciousness. They can't see it. They can't feel it. They can't be aware of it. You sense clearly, as you grow in this process, that there is so much more. You sense that there is no death. There is not even a moment where there is a cessation of awareness on the part of the Spirit. What a blessing! We say this to you now because there's a collision of realities taking place. Because that is the necessity in this time of change and transcendence. Because that old limited consciousness is going the way of the Neanderthal, is going the way of the human being who was guided by the gods and the goddesses and the elves and the fairies. Human beings who cannot see what you see, and therefore will not believe what you believe. And because they are frightened, and because they are frightened of death, and because they are frightened of God, and because they are frightened of life, will attack you. Because they know, deep beneath their ego, that they're dying. That consciousness is dying. And they feel the grief of the Neanderthal, who can't think as fast, and can't do as much, and whose numbers are shrinking, and whose time is short. It is not a hierarchy. You are not the jewels in the crown, and they the dust beneath the sandals. It is this aspect of reality, but you have the perspective to see that, and to love while you are being vilified, because you know the nature of man and the nature of God and that oneness. We say this to you because many of you are going to, in varying degrees, experience the effects of this polarity, of this collision of realities. And we offer you reassurance, and we suggest to you that you continue your building of a network of those coming to consciousness, that you know each other, that you share your experiences along this path to wakefulness. You need each other. You are growing into beings who are always to be connected with all other humans, aware of the connection. You're developing the abilities in your growth, the so-called psychic abilities, gradually integrating them into your own energy that will build a network of consciousness that is the next phase in the journey of humankind. In doing so, in going along this pathway by yourself and in the company of others, as a human being and as a part of humanity, you must begin the practice required, as any new muscle, new talent requires exercise and requires work, homework. You need to exercise your new abilities to build your wisdom, to build your conscious awareness as you begin, as you continue the unifying of inner self and outer self, higher self and ego. That's what you're doing. That's why it hurts so much. But as you continue on, practice, because you are, with your freedom, gaining the responsibility for the conscious direction of your life, the conscious creation of your reality. And with each other, hand in hand, in hand, in hand, in hand, creating a new direction, a new path, a new reality for humankind, as it joins in the comradeship of the universe. You are not alone. And it has been that sense of solitude, standing and looking up at space and cold blinking stars, the sense of smallness and of isolation that has been the human lot. That's gone too. You are not small and you are not isolated. You are in a universe teeming with life. You are becoming full members in a conscious, living, breathing, sentient universe. It's not going to happen overnight. None of these eras, none of these periods of development in human history have happened overnight, but it is significant that each level of development has taken a considerably shorter time than the one previous, because as the consciousness grows, the ability to change, and change with rapidity, grows. And as your consciousness flows into wholeness, it's not going to take so long for you to take your place. This generation, you're the pioneers, you're the beginners, you're the ones that have to get out in the trenches and suffer all of the attacks by those that do not understand. But within 2 or 3 more generations, you will become part of the whole. As well as being whole yourself, you join the universe. You become partners with many other races. Now, in your own lives, it becomes your responsibility to recreate your reality. Now, all along in this process, over the last several years, we have said to you over and over again, all you have to be is willing and get out of the way. If you're willing to allow the process to go forward and to face your fears, and by doing so to become whole, be guided. Tune in to your higher self. Follow your intuition. Now you're coming into a time where you begin to take on the overt responsibility for your own guidance. You begin to. You are now the apprentice, beginning to learn the work, so that the master begins to turn over a bit more responsibility to you. And as you prove your ability to deal with that responsibility more and then more, until finally you are a master. You are practicing doing this now. In your trust and in your faith, in your acceptance of the higher energies that are becoming a part of you, in your desire to learn to manipulate those energies, those tools that are becoming a part of your own armament, you are taking responsibility for the creation of your reality. And it's not a lonely job, because you are linking energies with others. Remember that the age that you are entering is no longer the age of the I. It is the age of the we. And as you find out about yourself, who you are, what your abilities are, you are also finding out, as your consciousness widens, that you are not so different from your neighbor and from your friend. And that grows until you recognize more and more your inner kinship. And so now the tapestry you weave becomes a group work. And as you move forward in this life, not that life is going to be without pain, you're still human beings, you're still growing and changing, you are not yet complete, but you are passing that time, that watershed, and now you begin to accrue rather than to in appearance, lose. Now you find the relationship either with your present partner in a mutual evolution, or you begin to find the relationship that does fit you hand in glove, that is complementary to your own energy, that is an awakened spirit as you are. You begin to find the work that expresses your purpose, in which you fit like a hand in a glove, and so may create what is the visible evidence of your own individual genius. And it doesn't mean that everybody becomes a philosopher. You will still be doing the work of human beings, but you will be doing it differently, and it will become different because you are different and your energy is different. And so you infuse your work and your relationship with your fellow workers with new consciousness, a new perspective. And gradually, as this process continues and mushrooms and more individuals become a conscious part of it, then the whole is enhanced. The energy rises and is refined, and the work that you do becomes human-oriented, enlightened, imbued with love. And so with the relationship, and so with the work, so with all of the areas of your life, have to change, have to grow, have to become better and more joyful because your consciousness is growing. So now you come into a time where this training becomes this, and it's self-training, and it's sharing with others, it's learning from each other, but more and more of the responsibility of the creation of your reality, of your life, comes to you. And that which has been blind faith becomes knowing, understanding, and an enhancement of the faith. Now come the rewards for your diligence, for your patience, for your faith. And all you have to do is see that, accept it, and it will become a part of you. You will begin to act out of your own enlightened self-interest. You will begin to act as a result of the fact that you see more. Your spectrum is widened. Your understanding is deepened. So in your meditations, visualize what we have spoken of, the truth of the reality of who you are becoming. Feel that energy flowing into you. Feel the confidence growing. Feel the pride growing within you, the pride of accomplishment that has its place. And begin deliberately to choose, not on the old basis of fear and anxiety and the least worst of the options. Be brave, be bold, be confident. At first, when you start doing this, you second guess yourself. Oh, dear, what am I doing? Where will this all end? I can't see the next step. Be bold. Act out the faith that has been building within you over the course of this journey. You will not be betrayed. This isn't a joke. It's a game with rules. But now in your widened understanding, you find out how flexible a lot of those rules are. And now you begin to define and redefine a new game with new rules. Still human, still limited by the laws of the physical universe, but recognizing that those laws weren't exactly what you thought they were. You are redefining life. You are redefining reality. You're doing it in your own lives, and collectively you're doing it around the world for the world. Recognize, we beg of you, the magnificence of this journey, the epic quality of this tale. Don't be held down. Don't be limited by the dailiness of life, by the minutiae, by the petty souls, by the angers. See this in your meditation where you'll see its grandeur. See this journey of a traveler freeing himself from bondage. It is each of your stories, and it is the story of all of you put together. In the next few months, great events are going to take place in your lives, in your spiritual lives, in your waking lives, in the world around you. Much could be interpreted by the limited vision as disaster, but you see it as reconstruction of a reality outworn, outmoded. New rules to be developed and applied. And so when you see the paroxysms of the old society as it crumbles, don't focus on that. That's what's passing. That's yesterday. See what is growing in the midst of that death. See the life that is aborning. That vision, that focusing on the joy, that focusing on the birth rather than on the death, brings the light into your life, into all lives. It supplies the fuel that is empowering a new age that is in the throes of birth. You have picked a momentous time to be alive, when you finally are coming into your own, recognizing your power. And you see, it is important to see it on the epic level too, because in your lives day to day, your goal is to recognize your power, to see your perfection, to let go of the illusion of limitation and of guilt. And you do that, but you do what you know bit by bit in small ways, and often you don't even notice. You think, oh, well, I'm not getting any better. But you are. And you will recognize it more clearly, not by looking at the little things, but seeing that big picture that is coming into view because you are growing into your godhood. Reality is not that solid chair that will always be there when you sit down. It is far better than that. It is malleable. It is a creative substance that you can build into any shape and into any form, that you need not be victimized by what seems to be an unknowing and uncaring fate in a cold and cruel and strange world. You are the masters of your fate. You are the creators of your reality. And now you may build with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. The blindfold gone, the cotton pulled out of your ears, the wheelchair gone, strong and whole and united. See the vision, and in those dark moments, and in those times of confusion, recreate that vision in your heart and share it with your companions on this journey. And together begin to build the reality that incorporates all of those separate tapestries. And begin the journey that you have come here to begin. Now we will draw this reading to a close, and we'll return in a few minutes for questions.
I have Gladys, who's sitting next to me, and have we known each other in another life?
Yes, we see a situation in which she was your servant, and this would have been in Victorian times, in the 1870s. is the focal point of the connection. She had been raised. She was the daughter of a cook in your home. This was in Boston, Massachusetts, and she became a servant as she grew as a child and stayed with your family for a number of years. She, at the age of 26, you were in your late 50s. You were both female in that life, and she was. You dismissed her from her work, from her job, because you believed that she had stolen from you. In fact, that which was stolen was not taken by her, but by a man who was an outside servant, a gardener, and who was not suspected at all. And so there was such a karmic situation arising there. And in her own situation, she did not. She felt guilt-stricken, though she had not done this, and felt that she had somehow obscurely betrayed you and your family, and her own family. There was obviously hierarchical situation between the two of you then. This is a renewal of mutual trust in this life, and she will find for you something that you have lost. Yes.
Last Sunday, there was a very unusual sunset, and it was visible, I guess, around 6 o'clock in the evening. And it was very bright pink orange, and it looked like a giant column going up into the sky. I was wondering if maybe that was some kind of an anomaly. I'd never seen anything like it. Then the clouds were green around treetop level.
Understand that there are... this is a time of what the Bible would call signs and portents. And they are anomalous events that can be easily explained for the benefit of those who don't need the understanding that can flow from such an event. It is something that has meaning for those who find meaning in it, and for those who do not, has none. This phenomenon, as you viewed it, is a harbinger of dawn. It may be a sunset, but the sunset itself is a harbinger of dawn. It creates in its grandeur the promise of the morrow, just before the coming of the darkness of the night. And it is a promise to be fulfilled, and it was restating that promise for you.
Plautus, a very good friend of my brother's, and an old kind of family friend of mine too, I suppose, although I didn't know him very well, has recently comes back into town once a year. His name is Peter, and this year something different has happened between us. We've kind of developed a very close friendship and on kind of different levels. And could you just tell me a little bit about him and about this relationship?
Yes, in the past this relationship was one of a child and her uncle. And this uncle in your life in that time came into your life bearing wonders. This was in Scotland, in the Highlands. It was in the early time of this century. And you were quite isolated in a rural area. You were a young girl of 11 years of age when the uncle returned. He'd been a seafaring man and had visited many ports of call around the world. And he brought with him visions for you of the reality that lay beyond the reality that you knew. And that who created in you an excitement and a perspective that was not the common lot of your peers, and created as a result in you a restiveness and a need to grow beyond your peers, and created a situation in which you no longer fit in the society of your peers, because you saw and understood how wide the horizons of possibility actually were. So as a result of that stimulation, you did what you would not otherwise have done, and that is to move away from that place, first to a large city, Glasgow, and then 3 years later you came to America. And it began a whole new chapter in your own life and lives, in an opening of consciousness.
Thank you.
Plautus, have Andre and I been sisters before, or related in any way?
Yes, we are seeing you as sisters who were united in old age, who had been separated, both by marriage, you to a man who was lived in a different area, and by the experiences of your life, and by the early experiences in the childhood, where there was a good deal of unrest, jealousy, rivalry. And so while you'd been close in early childhood, as you grew into your adolescence, a separation began, and that was reinforced by physical separation. Then in old age, in a state of mutual need, economically, as well as the need for human companionship, both of you widowed, you returned to the home of your father, of your childhood, and took up residence together, neither of you having lived there since childhood. And in fact, you did visited very seldom too. And so you were drawn together, apparently out of necessity, but formed a deep bond in old age, with all rivalries forgotten, all battles fought, and created companionship, mutual support, help for each other in the time of mutual need.
Before I came here tonight, I had a little go-about with my son and his friend. And the topic of the subject had to be the friend's father and mother, but something was happening between Aram and I think the question, first of all, I knew to drop out of the discussion and actually kept it up with some intensity, good humor, but intensity. And he did too, and I think it had something to do with the male.
Yes, exactly so. The image that we received was the stag at bay. And it is that. It is more complex than that, as your son has deeper levels that are that you do not even or very seldom see. He is not so benign, not so calm deep within as on the surface. And he is in a time of establishing his own dominance, his own identity. He is in reaction also because of this need on his part to establish himself as a male and as an individual, is in combat with you, but on a very subtle plane, as love is great. But his need for growth and the establishment of his being is great also. He labors also under the curse of his father, a curse that is a blessing in disguise, for the example of the father in ineffectuality and in frustration and in getting in his own way is one that is more real to the boy than to the daughter. Because he is his father's son, and as male to male, and so has some insecurities regarding his own strength and his pattern as it develops, and so he is establishing his space, and he is within the limits that he allows himself. expressing the anger that is beneath the surface. Anger both at the father and at the mother, but based at a very deep level. He came into your life and into the circumstances of your life for a purpose, and that purpose is now being manifest and is jarring him loose from the past.
Can you tell me what the nature of his anger toward me is? I understand it more with...
It relates to gender identification, to male-female issues, and to the power struggle that is inherent within that context.
Plautus, can you tell me about the connection between Giorgio and me?
We see two plotting together, two males. It is a relationship of necessity, of mutual dependence, focused on a single area where there is a fundamental distrust, a fundamental layer of dishonesty, but a very deep need for mutual reliability. And the work was a crime, but you shouldn't attach present circumstances, you shouldn't attach moral consideration to that. It was for a purpose that transcended its immediate context. And we're seeing two who came together out of that need to rely upon each other in the commission of a robbery, and who betrayed each other because the connection was not what it purported to be.
Yes.
It was, as we say, a relationship of necessity and of opportunity and opportunism. And when threat entered the picture, there was no core of loyalty to sustain the relationship. Became every man for himself. And you will find that in the course of this connection now, that there will be cause for mutual misunderstanding and betrayal, and object lessons in the nature of the relationship.
I'd like to know if a man named Carlos and I had a previous life together.
Here was the life of a man who died very young, and it was in Spain, and he was a bullfighter, and you had been his love since childhood, since you were 13, and he 19, and you married when you were 15, and he was 21, and he was killed in the ring at the age of 23. And so there was an abrupt loss of a lover by one who was little more than a child, and it was while he had glory, there was very little riches, and so you were flung into dependency upon. You had two children. You were pregnant with the second child when he died, and you were plunged into dependency on his family, for your own was for some reason not accessible, or did not wish to rally round. At any rate, you became very much a daughter to them, and really a child with your own children, you see. So you were a mother and still a child to those who sustained you and protected you. And so it was a loss of status, it was a loss of position, it was a loss of love, and a regression into childhood circumstances that you needed to pull yourself out of, and in this life we will find in the nexus of this relationship circumstances that in their final analysis are to help you gain your own independence and your own maturity, your own independence from ties that bind you to the past.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Plautus, but could you also tell me why I kept reacting to this instead of withdrawing in that discussion with Aaron? I know better. Even though I was good-humored about it, why I didn't pull out?
Well, because in the first place, it was necessary to the dynamics of the situation, and in the second place, you saw the father in the son, and reacted at that level.
Thank you.
Plautus, I have a friend of mine who I used to work with. Her name is Linda, and for the past year, she's had all sorts of physical problems. Can you give me any insight to that?
Well, this is a part of her path, and it is painful, and we are feeling that pain. We would say that this thicket of limitation that she is feeling is necessary for her development. For you, it is a call for sustenance, for nurture, for the application of healing, the healing energy of love. It would be perhaps not appropriate for me to go into the details of the reasons for her need for these circumstances in this life, because that is truly her story. But it is, we would say, that the option of healing is now present, and we would say to you that to open your own experience in terms of the development of spiritual understanding would be to open the door of salvation to her.
Thank you.
Plautus, I have a question. I just came. I know you're tired. I had a very unusual meditation tonight, and part of it concerned my group and part other personal concerns, and I wondered how valid it was, if it was, what the meaning was.
It was valid, somewhat misleading on the surface, but as you peel that onion, you will find that the layers beneath explain the surface circumstances. Regarding the group, there is what we are seeing is light and dark intermixed. What we're seeing is a worm in the apple. Mm-hmm. There is a battle being played out of darkness and light in the context of the group, and not so much in individual versus individual, but within each individual and then interacting.
Okay. Okay.
Could you tell me the connection between Colleen, my ex-wife, and myself?
There has been a relationship here before that was also a romantic relationship, but that was consumed by anger. It was a relationship in which her anger, expressed verbally in words that cut, was responded to ultimately by one who was long-suffering in an outburst of anger long stifled that resulted in physical attack and the end of that relationship. It is a chapter in a long story of two who seek balance. that balance is not in this life, in the flesh, but in the spirit. The balance for you is to be found in the access to love and forgiveness. The balance in her is left for another day.
Okay, thank you.
Plautus, Tim and I both died in Pompeii. What was our relationship in that life?
We are seeing a man in full flight. The fear of that accompanied the destruction and his death was only the climax of a life that was ridden with fear. We are seeing one who seeks now to have his fears calmed, to have his defenses breached. What was not possible then, for you were separated by impediment, speech. You could not speak. You could not speak.
Was I married to him?
No. No. This is relationship heavily karmic, very complex, very much in the action of development now, and you really need to allow that relationship to unfold without asking too many questions about it at this point.
Thank you.
There's just too much past there to. It would only be an impediment.
Okay.
While we're on him, though, could you tell me why? He has, such enormous animosity towards me. I feel very benign towards the fellow myself. But from the onset, it's not just that I'm Pisces.
No, it has rather more to do with your lopping off his ears.
So much for benign Pisces.
And you were in a judgment position over him and caused him to be separated from his ears, and
there you go.
it still rankles a bit. I'm sure.
Could you tell me when this was and how?
Yes, it was in Persia. And it was in the, according to Western reckoning, about the 9th century of this era, and he was he had betrayed the state, the ruler, by speaking what he had heard. And so, to assure that he heard no more, his ears were cut off and his eardrums punctured.
How am I going to be making amends for this?
Very careful.
I assume that I will help bring balance to that situation between us.
Yes, but you don't have to rush at it. You know, it's in time. In time, it will be a restoration of the ability to hear.
Well, as long as we're on him. Why have I always had a problem with him?
Well, of course, everyone has a problem with him. That's the game that he has created, you see, to protect himself, so that he is constantly at war and causing wars as a defense against the secrets that he holds within him. He's an old soul. He's a guide. He's a very remarkable being, but he has, because of his power, because of his strength, created a nearly impenetrable thicket of complete with thorns to keep people away, and to defend himself by creating this storm around him. So he stays at the eye.
If I had a connection with him?
In the beginning, in the early years of this series of lives in the Christ time, there was a connection, and you were quite put off. He was a ribald man and a bit of a lecher, and more than a bit of a lecher. And you were rather straight-laced and dedicated to the spirit, and quite horrified at his indulgence in the flesh. And he thought you a terrible prig, and baited you freely. And so there is this connection. He's coming in this life. The reason his defenses are so high is that he knows it's a meeting place for all of those that he has done battle with in the past. And so he's created rather a difficult situation for himself, but it's being worked through.
Or are you saying, I mean, did I have a connection with him, or are you just saying it was generic?
Generic?
Well, I mean, do I specifically? Did I have ever?
We spoke of this. So we're going to draw this reading tonight to a close, and we thank you all for your attention, and we bid you Godspeed as your journeys continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Plautus.